I do know somebody that's been over to Ukraine once as a foreign volunteer, and they're probably going to be heading back there again. And the guy is a British vet, and it kind of plays into that because he was in Afghanistan a bunch of times, and he's always been a drifter. He's never really gotten back into it. And it's not like he's a warmonger, but he likes that lifestyle, that
It's adrenaline.
regimen. He likes that military regimen and all that. So I know he's getting ready to go back over there again, and it sucks because I really don't want him to go over there. But at the same time, it's like the only thing I guess that brings him contentment because of all the shit he went through in Afghanistan, and it's just PTSD probably.
It's almost like his nervous system is like his nervous system is calibrated for a particular environment now. So
Yeah.
like transitioning into like the average daily activities is just.
Yeah, he sent me pictures.
What that's like, to be honest.
He sent me pictures, and you can tell he's really happy over there doing humanitarian work. That's what he was doing, supposedly. But I think he was providing like security for humanitarian aid. But this second time, I don't think that's what's going to be going on. But I hope the best for him. But like you said, that's just the way he's wired now, and it's sad because he's a young guy. I mean, you look at him with baby face in Afghanistan, and now he's just rough looking, and that's just where he wants to be. And it's kind of sad. He just chases that shit.
Well, and also the other thing I can imagine, I don't have any like military prior history, but I can imagine it's like constantly adrenaline rush, even when there's not fighting, because there's the anticipation of a potential fight any second. So you always got your adrenal glands pumping a certain level of, hormones and neurotransmitters that you just get acclimated to that level, and it's like a drug addiction basically. I mean, because war can be very exciting. You know what I mean? Because a lot of guys.
Vaughn, sorry for interrupting, Greg, but I think what you're saying can be like concomitant to more factors. But I would like to ask Vaughn this regarding your friend. Like, what was his prior circumstance before going into the war? Because as far as I understand it, there's quite it's pretty much the economic incentive, and it's quite often people who, of course, do not have necessarily the best economic opportunities beforehand that they quite often tend to join the military because it offers so many benefits.
I think he was probably like, he was pretty young, so he was probably right out of high school, but he went into the infantry. Yeah, I think he did 3 tours in Afghanistan, and and this was all back early on, so it was the bad old days. It wasn't at the end, where it's, not saying it was a cakewalk, but a lot less dangerous. And I think when he got back, he just worked odd jobs, security stuff, like always something kind of like had to be regimented. Like that's just his primary years of becoming a man were in the military doing that, and obviously all the stuff he saw affected him. But I think it's just he never was able to fit back into normal society.
Would it kind of be a little bit accurate to perception that because like when he came back, the way you kind of described it, maybe I misunderstood, but he kind of ended up kind of doing a lot of odd jobs, so he saw temp jobs, as a strong contrast to it, and also would he have a lot to come back to? Because I kind of have gotten the impression for some people in the military, coming back would be after a long time in the military, coming back is sort of similar to coming back from prison. You've been a long time out of society, so it's and you maybe didn't even feel like you fit properly before you entered it. Like, what are you going to do when you come back out again? You're going to go to the people you knew, probably. Probably private, right?
A lot of him, it's all his army buddies. I mean, they're all. That's what he's about. He gets together with them. He reminisces with them. And they're all kind of like they're just blue collar guys now. But obviously the blue collar life's not for him because, like I said, it's like as soon as this popped up, he was rearing to go and went, and then he came back and he basically said something about taking a holiday, and now I know he's talking about heading back over there, and he's actually recruiting people to go with him, and they're all prior service British people, but it's probably people like him that are just bored and don't fit in, and that's what they like to do. Maybe not, I'm not saying like killing and shit, but I'm just saying serving.
Right, you may not like your job, but all the other things around it kind of make it worth it, perhaps. Like, so you might be, for example, we know people involved in quite a lot of shady businesses that, and people know that what they're doing cause harm, right? But they kind of like, they don't want to give up the privilege that they're positioned in, and the privilege is relative. For him, it may not seem like that for the outside, but for him, it becomes it's sort of like how many of people I know, including myself, were to be like, if I were to have to go back to my hometown, it will feel like I have to go back to a penal colony. Like I don't want that same brick road again. The same people who I know haven't changed up until now. They will not change until later, or the same things around you get my point. So I can definitely understand like your friend if even without knowing him, this isn't too hard to imagine. Like being like after you've been in that profession for so long, and prior circumstances considering, it doesn't have to be like terrible or anything like that. Because this is again a relative thing, a subjective thing, also. So it's but for people around, like we were talking about PTSD, right? And this is kind of relevant because you care about he's your friend, of course, right? And when he's involved in this business, one part of it is one thing is that he kills, but he can also get killed or maimed or whatever.
Yeah.
And this is not something that's going to be like of course you may not necessarily cry a river or anything like that, but this will affect like you and especially those closer to him even further, right? So like
it'll be like he just disappears more than likely because you'll never know what happened to him if something did happen to him.
right, and what you're told is probably it's probably going to be glorified. Anyways, it's not going to be entirely accurate. Maybe a teammate shot him by accident or something like that. No, he fought heroically. Right, so it's going to be something glorified.
I mean, you could go over there and be the baddest motherfucker you wanted. It don't matter when the first artillery barrage hits and you just get I mean, you look at the videos of the battle of the tree lines and stuff where these positions are, and it's just, I don't know. You could be
when I see the Russian artillery go,
it
looks intimidating. Like I've always been like when I saw the U.S. Air Force kind of going and bombing, it's like, and that is also kind of like the shock and awe. It is really shocking. It's really impressive. But I mean, you look at the Russian artillery, that's like, oh my God, I would piss my pants and shit myself twice if I had to face that myself.
I don't even see how the people still alive in those tree lines when they climb out of there. I'm like, where the hell was that guy? It's like you see like it's just destroyed, burnt to nothing, and all of a sudden there's like some guy moves a tarp out of the way and three guys come climbing out. You're like, well, what the hell? I mean, it's just insane.
And how reminiscent isn't this of the First World War, right? Because they had to man their trenches and so forth, even though they knew they were going to be blasted to the shit. They had artillery like the Russians and more so, right? And the Russians seem to be employing the same strategy as the Germans did against the French. Once the Germans had managed, like they couldn't advance closer to Paris, that's why their trenches were usually better built and equipped and so forth than the French one, was because the Germans knew that, okay, well, we have to consolidate the position. We don't have to push on yet. The impetus is on the French, and the French was very aware of that, and this became very problematic for the French for a lot of reasons. But France was still somewhat in parity to Germany, so to speak. I mean, obviously Germany was stronger, but if you compared Ukraine to Russia, and you see this happening with all, like they are forced into the impetus of an offensive without any parity in other weapon systems and so forth. And you see that the NATO equipment coming in, the Russians have an answer for that, and they generally seem to be capable of, maybe not right away or maybe not in transit, but they will generally wear it out and take it out. And then the war just keeps on grinding off. And the only response the Ukrainian army really has, regardless of equipment being delivered, is basically, rounding up a bunch of a pig farm or something like that and send, a Porsche right into these front lines, not having, who is most likely to be forcefully sent into what would be the equivalent of penal battalions? Well, that would be dissidents. And that will quickly have a chilling effect. You start to say like, oh no, maybe we should try to see if we can get along with our neighbor before they completely fucking crush us. then or like maybe we don't have to give up, but maybe we should at least try to have a dialogue. You seem like one of those defeatists. Let's put you in the front line, and you just yeah, we need some cannon fodder over at Kherson or wherever, right? Like I wouldn't be surprised if, considering that they have removed the workers' rights on pretty much all fronts about for the like 70% of the economic sector in Ukraine, basically allowing their oligarchs to have like full prey on them at will. And that means also, of course, when it comes to the war effort, they can choose, and basically, they quite a lot of them, as far as I get it, they aren't adequately trained. There are those who are sent to Poland and so forth, and we can see the result of that. But when they're faced up to this artillery superiority and all the other measurements that the Russians can do to maintain that kind of firepower, they kind of end up in a position where they have to repeat World War One, no matter how much they know that they might be repeating history, and that this is definitely not a sustainable strategy for them in the long run. How I don't see how they would otherwise do it, right? And so it's like but it's like terrible for them right now, because now even if they were able to, even if like the extremists that would generally try to threaten Zelensky if he tried to put peace on the table, like now Putin would just say like, no, we'll just see how this winter goes, maybe, or whatever, right? Like it's still going to be, and while this goes on the surface, and it's like, oh, this village here, or whatever here, we are of course not fed really, and we cannot also know all the ignorance is the universality here, right? But we do know one thing for sure: there's a lot of people getting, if they even survive, maybe they didn't even want to. They get blown into several, like vaporized in some cases. It is like, yeah, how can Ukrainians, find an out on this, especially if the Russians are not keen on negotiating? Are we going should we as NATO send, for example, Ukraine more weapons and see if they can get a stronger bargaining chip? Like we haven't gotten a single suggestion that is remotely realistic from the NATO leaders on how to actually win this war, which is a pretty big red flag for anyone. Like, no matter,